动天下，中国欢迎，上海欢迎，祝上海第16届世界艺术大赛圆满成功。
尊敬的汤涛副
Vice Minister Tang, Vice Mayor Peng Cheng-lei, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Welcome to the closing ceremony of the WorldSkills Conference 2021. I'm Cheng Cheng from Shanghai Media Group. First, I would like to introduce to you the VIP guests. They are Mr. Tang Tao, Vice Minister of Human Resources and Social Security of China, Vice Mayor Peng Cheng-lei of Shanghai, and Mr. David Hui, Chief Executive Officer of WorldSkills International, who will appear on the big screen. In addition, we will have with us 4 guest speakers who have been deeply involved in the previous sessions over this week. They will share with us the conclusions and outcomes of the discussions of this week's discussion. Ms. Nazreen Mani, GN, Chief Executive Director, Ms. Jacqueline Tenzer, Regional Representative for Europe, WorldSkills Champion Trust, Mr. Shane McLennan, OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SME Regionals and Cities, and Mr. Neil from WorldSkills UK. Also with us are officials from the WorldSkills Conference Coalition, experts and scholars and colleagues from relevant government authorities. Welcome you all. Well, this conference is special in the sense that it is against the backdrop of COVID-19 epidemic. Though we cannot talk to all the guests and representatives face to face, it has not impacted us much for the discussion over the past week for our discussions. Skills movement has been impacted by the COVID-19. However, it will come out of the pandemic and it will continue to move forward. This is why, in collaboration with the Ministry of Social Security and Human Resources of China, the Shanghai Municipal Government has organized this World Skills Conference 2021 from October the 25th to 29th. We have focused on topics like skills for green jobs, poverty reduction, as well as the apprentice system. So the interpretation headset, channel 1 for Chinese and channel 2 for English.
I'm gonna switch to English. 正如我刚才所说的，这4天的这个成果都是我们大家等一下在 panel discussion 就能。Very strong and active, then WorldSkills Conference is at the center to connect different voices. And in 1 year from now, we will pick up and thread again and continue to deepen these conversations at the WS Conference 2022. And we'd like to thank the WorldSkills Conference Coalition for their tremendous support in shaping and developing the conference program together with us. And they are International Labour Organization, European Commission, UNESCO, Univoc, and UNIDO, the World Bank Global Apprenticeship Network, British Council, African Union, OECD, and German Federal Ministry of Education and Research. Thank you very much for all of your support. And we'd also would like to take the opportunity to thank all the teams at WorldSkills China and WorldSkills Shanghai working on the successful implementation of the conference. And now it's about time to move on to our closing plenary session of this conference, so in which we assemble the key moderators of the 3 tracks, as well as a member from the WorldSkills Champion Trust representing the youth. And now let's meet them. All right, they are Ms. Nazreen Mani, Executive Director of Gang Global Apprenticeship Network, and Mr. Neil Bentley Gokman, CEO of WorldSkills UK. And we have Mr. Shane McLachlan, OECD Center for Entrepreneurship, SMEs, Regions and Cities, and he's the Communication and Public Affairs Manager. And also we have Ms. Jacqueline Tanzer, Regional Representative for Europe of WorldSkills Champions Trust. Welcome. All right, and I also would like to ask the very first question to I think it's to Nazreen, right? Oh, actually to Jacqueline, sorry, to Jacqueline Tanzer. So, because you are representing youth, for the past 4 days, we all realized that how important it is to involve more voice from youth from around the world for our skills development. So how did you experience the conference for the past week, and what are your main takeaways, especially for the youth representative or for the youth perspective?
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on this closing panel to look back at this really intense week of discussion. And this brings me straight onto the first takeaway I'd like to mention, because youth involvement in this conference has been really remarkable. 8 out of the 14 sessions had youth representatives on them, which means we're more than halfway there. The big topics discussed in this year's conference can be really scary, especially for a young person, because all of those topics vastly affect the future, our future. And often this can be so overwhelming and make you feel helpless because you're so small compared to those big challenges we're facing. But what I got from previous discussions, as well as this conference, is that youth is incredibly resilient and brave enough to say, hey, something needs to change, and we want to be the ones to change it. And not only because we kind of have to, but also because there's this high level of awareness amongst this generation. Young people want to create a better world, not just better for themselves, but better for everyone. More equal and more inclusive, more sustainable. A world that's still going to be hospitable for future generations. So while the future is scary, this conference has been very uplifting. We, the youth, want change, and while we can raise awareness of what we need, we're not the ones putting policies in place. But I got the impression that there's a high level of urgency now amongst all stakeholder groups, that youth and our future is at a high risk. The COVID-19 pandemic only highlighted many issues that have been there before. So even though COVID made us take a few steps back, regress rather than progress with our agenda to make this world a better place, it has also given us the opportunity to see things a lot clearer. It showed us what needs to be done now, not in 10 years, not in 5. Now is the time to take action. And there's this new relevance and a sense of urgency that I feel hasn't been there before. And COVID, if it wasn't good for anything else, I think this is the one thing we should take with us from this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Well, the second question to Nazrin. We know that you moderated all 3 sessions in the track on the future of apprenticeship systems. So as Jacqueline just said, what needs to be done right now, and especially under the influence of the COVID-19? And what do you think is the current state of apprenticeship?
Thanks so much, Jessie. I think it was really exciting to have the discussion that looked at innovations in apprenticeships, looked at partnerships and alliances. And yesterday we closed off with tools. And the key takeaways from that is apprenticeships are front and center in the drive to create an agile and responsive workforce. The need for a future-fit workforce is paramount. COVID has highlighted the need for skilling, the need for agility in the labor market. And we've all agreed that apprenticeships is one important pathway to give people those tools to actively and meaningfully participate in the labor market. That was a big issue that came through all of the discussions, along with the need for active private sector participation. Demand-led planning was a key theme. And demand-led planning means that the private sector must work very closely with policymakers to design programs, to develop curricula, but also to ensure policy alignment. That was a critical element that was highlighted in all 3 sessions. We can't have policy developed in a vacuum. Policy needs to be developed with stakeholders, with partners who are working in the vocational education system. We cannot meaningfully include marginalized people without socioeconomic development as a key factor in education policy development. It was exciting to listen to the strategies around awareness and promotions for apprenticeships. I think that's an area where we can do a lot more work at a global level and at a country level, presenting vocational education and apprenticeships as a respectable pathway to get people actively engaged in the labor market, to lead people out of poverty, to work on the sustainability agenda. And I think apprenticeships are seen as this cross-cutting approach, really building these close relationships between the workplace, between the education systems, and big opportunities for us, I think, to foster improved relationships, greater policy alignment. There is this need for engagement, policy development, and practice at a macro and meso level, both at a country level as well as a global level. We're seeing fantastic work being done by organizations such as the International Labour Organization, the European Union, the African Union, the OECD, all of these global bodies, policy development agencies, and development support coming through with a focus on quality vocational education, quality education and training in the vocational space. So huge kudos and credit to this movement. I think the WorldSkills Conference has given us an important platform to demonstrate the value of apprenticeships. The need for tools, again, was highlighted yesterday, and the fact that there are tools available and these resources are, in the most cases, free, easily accessible, and customizable was very exciting. I think there's an appreciation, an increased appreciation for the need to take country context and country needs into account when developing solutions. There is no longer this one-size-fits-all approach. And I think that also is a big step towards increasing participation in the system. And in this pathway of learning and training, it was good to listen to young people. I think Jacqueline made the point, there's an opportunity that COVID has presented. As much as there's been all of the disruption and the heartache and the pain that's come with COVID, there are pockets of opportunities and we need to capitalize now. And the vocational education and apprenticeship movement is one such area where we can take the opportunity to spread the word about the opportunities presented by apprenticeships, the need to create this future fit workforce, and apprenticeships give us a huge opportunity to ensure that skilling is relevant, skilling is equipping people with the skills that the labor market urgently needs. But also, interestingly, there's this notion that apprenticeships can make the world much bigger, because whether you're young or old and you're doing an apprenticeship, you're building a skill set that makes you attractive, that gives you mobility, it gives you respect and skills that are in demand across the world. At the same time, it also makes the world a little bit smaller because you're learning skills that counterparts across the world are learning. And we see that in the competition. You know, everyone is working on a similar quality of skills. So it's got this very unique way of making the world bigger and smaller. And I think that's exciting. That's one key takeaway from the 3 days of discussion that we had in this track. Thank you very much, Jessie. Back to you.
Thank you, Nazrin. We couldn't agree more, because for years we talked about internship, we talked about partnership in the businesses, but well, to me, it's a very first time for me to really think of apprenticeship, because it seems more focused for vocational education and to skills. 中国人有一句话，师傅领进门，修行靠本人。其实这个工匠精神跟这个学徒制是有非常大的一个连接的。So I was saying, like, in China, we also have a very long tradition of actually learning skills with the 师傅. With the master. So this is apprenticeship, and this is also a key maybe to have one in their learning curve, really to have their skills practiced, or say have their hands, you know, get their hands dirty to the skills that are going to support them for a lifetime. And also maybe it's key for poverty alleviation as well. So the next question goes to Shane, because the track on poverty alleviation has been introduced for the very first time in the WorldSkills Conference. So what was your impression for the particular discussions, and how relevant is the topic in relation to skills development?
Thanks, and thanks so much for having me on the panel today. In fact, it's incredibly relevant. We had 3 sessions, in fact, in the poverty alleviation track. So we spoke about building skills and how to use new learning models to strengthen inclusivity. And we also spoke about how improving employment outcomes through skill development is an essential factor. And then the session I moderated was actually on building skills for resilient society. So this was all kind of looking at poverty alleviation and how to leave poverty behind. As you say, we're very fortunate to hear what countries and individuals are doing on skills development to contribute to poverty alleviation. This is a particularly important time, as we've been saying with Nazrin and with Jacqueline, in light of the COVID pandemic, considering the impact that it's had on global poverty, with so much disruption too to all types of education. The 3 sessions explored the effects of undereducation as both a consequence and a cause of poverty. So just to give you a flavour, a bit of an overview of what we discussed, the sessions looked at vocational skills and training, as well as other innovative learning practice that is a central gateway to better jobs and work, to self-employment and to entrepreneurship, which is an area that I work in at the local level at the OECD, as well as on SMEs. So in the first session, we're actually very fortunate to be inspired by the story of a young Chinese teacher. And that Chinese teacher was called Jiang Yingchen. And he spoke about how skills training had lifted him out of poverty. He shared how his hometown is in a poor, mountainous area of China, and that his father unfortunately passed away when he was 3 years old, and his mother left the family when he was 4. So Jiang was kind of faced with this option of whether to go to high school or to vocational school, and he chose the vocational school option. And he kind of had the opportunity from there to jump onto the stage of WorldSkills competitions. So he went on then to win a gold medal in the field of car painting. And after the competition, he received a number of honours and awards, which kind of greatly improved, as it were, his financial situation. So he became a school teacher after that. And just to say hats off to all teachers. I was a teacher in a former life in Australia, which is my home country, as well as David's. We're actually celebrating World Teachers Day today. So hats off to all teachers. But as a teacher, Jiang passed on his years of teaching and experience to his students. And he also kind of converted, as it were, from a registered poor family member to a person who was able to fund other poor families. So really lifted himself and his family out of poverty. So he's also contributed in a number of other poverty alleviation projects. For example, he set up a studio to pass on his skills, in fact, to students in vulnerable communities and help them rise above poverty through skills development. And he's, in fact, bravely donated his prize money that he won through the WorldSkills competitions to students in need to encourage them to further their skills. So basically, this story reinforces really the broader story in China. And as we know, for the last 50 years, since the late 70s, China has contributed to more than 70% of the world's poverty reduction. Indeed, we were really inspired, as I said, by Jiang's story at the outset of the session. And we went on to hear from the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security in China, who shared information on a number of initiatives that use the skill training to alleviate poverty. So the representative spoke about VET programs that give some 30 million learners access to VET initiatives absolutely free of charge. They're also running internet and training platforms with over 200 million hours of training for Chinese people, also free of charge, and providing job training and work-based learning programs. So we also heard from the Deputy Minister of Higher Education in South Africa, who gave us some really great insight into the massive effort to alleviate poverty there. He described it as kind of a relentless war on poverty that they've been waging for over 20 years since the 90s, and the real focus on social assistance and, importantly, in providing economic opportunities through education and through training programs. We also heard from the Director General of Vocational Education, Winkan Sikarantu, in Indonesia, and he shared about the 3 ways that they're using learning approaches to leave poverty behind. So he spoke about how they're working with teachers and other actors to improve the curriculum, how they're using applied research approaches, practically regarding patents and rights. And he shared too on a very important factor in skills development regarding how they're working to connect the classroom and the workplace by linking industry to VET programs. So I was really impressed by the Indonesian focus on young people who have, of course, suffered disproportionately through the pandemic. But they're also really stressed the fact that they're looking to other countries to learn and how they're approaching skills development to help them at the national and the local level. We were also very fortunate to have Christine Hoffram from the ILO, who spoke about basically what makes people resilient, including on the way that skills helps us to shift work-based activities if needed. And also she spoke about the importance of knowing how to quickly learn new skills through one's career trajectory and how to better schools rather create opportunities and access to jobs as well as other services. So Christine also spoke about how the most vulnerable communities, those Indigenous people, people with disabilities, migrant workers, many of whom face discrimination, have been those who were at risk of most losing their job in those key worker positions when the pandemic hit. She shared also that many people have this heavier backpack from those communities to carry when they want to lift themselves out of poverty because of simply where they're born and the vulnerabilities that they're exposed to. We're also fortunate to hear from Christine about some of the labour market impacts and some of the trends and the current data. Globally, some of the working hour losses have been tremendous. That was at 9% of all activity last year in 2020, and it's about half that, so between 4 and 5% this year in 2021. She spoke about Asia and that there's an employment gap of around 70 million jobs there. So it's important to note some of these important data points and trends, and that kind of reinforced a lot of the learnings from that particular session. My colleague at the OECD, Rafael Trapasso, also moderated a session, and just to quickly give you an overview, they spoke about kind of strengthening inclusive skill systems based on new learning models. So they spoke about TVET systems, how modern TVET should provide individuals with both the technical and the transversal skills. And they spoke also about how the pandemic negatively affected policy delivery. Basically, vulnerable groups have suffered from, as we said, this reduced access to education. And that, of course, included VET activities. And really, the outcome of that session was a response in that local governments need to mobilise resources and try to offer individuals a tailored basket of services and financial support and education. In the third session in the policy alleviation track, my colleague Karen Maguire from the OECD spoke about how skills are a critical pathway for accessing employment, and that quality employment can be a tool to not only lift an individual, but a whole family, indeed, out of poverty. In that session, they also spoke about strong skills, and having strong skills can build self-confidence and also bring other dividends. So they heard stories from India, Zimbabwe, and also from a rising star in the jewelry world, Leah Rodriguez, who is a WorldSkills champion. So to sum up, yes, we really need to continue the discussions about poverty alleviation in the context of skills development, as there are a range of solutions for individuals to overcome poverty, as we heard through these sessions. So important to note is that skills systems, really, we must not leave behind disadvantaged groups, including young people, as we've said. But we've got to make sure that disadvantaged groups, vulnerable communities, can access and participate equally, so that no one's left behind.
Thank you, Shane. I'm very glad you touched on labor market a little bit, and also I think everything sustainable is good enough. So we're going to talk about green jobs. So Neil, you moderated the session in the track Skills for Green Jobs. So would you like to update some of the messages of the speakers for us, please?
Sure, thanks, Jessie, and thanks for the invitation to talk at the closing session today. I think, this is incredibly relevant conversation about green skills, particularly as the Global Climate Change Summit is about to start in the UK this coming week. So there's lots of focus on climate change and sustainability. And our sessions were really about the challenges and the opportunities globally, as well as across Asia Pacific. And we have fantastic partners in our discussions like UNESCO, UNIDO, the ILO, Stanley Black & Decker, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, as well as agencies from China, the Philippines, Cambodia, and the Hindu Kush region. And what was fantastic is we started off our discussion, it was kicked off by a member of the WorldSkills Champions Trust, Lee Hee-dong, who really challenged everybody and put the responsibility on to us all, governments, businesses, public bodies, and individuals to really act on sustainability and climate change. And he used his own example of how he is adapting his skill in his work at Samsung to help ensure that Samsung products are ever more durable and contributing to sustainability for the long term. And that really helped set the scene for some very lively and productive discussions. And I think there are three main takeaways from all of the discussions in our track. The first is that there is for sure significant policy and regulatory focus and change on decarbonising economies, being driven by governments and public bodies at global, regional and national levels. And we heard lots of examples of how governments are taking action, including, for example, in China, with the carbon trading scheme, setting carbon prices, to hydropower developments and energy efficiency focus in the Hindu Kush region. So the significant focus on regulators and governments, I think, seizing the need to act to decarbonize economies. That was the first takeaway from the discussion. The second, though, was around challenges around market and business demand for green skills to meet the ambitions that are being set by governments. And there's skills mismatches between the quantity and quality of skills supply into those business and market demands. And so that has not only been hampered by COVID in terms of the impact that's had on business planning, and we had a fantastic example from Stanley Black & Decker talking about the challenges they've had in responding to market and business demand for COVID-related products while keeping a focus on green skills. And what came out in that discussion was the paucity of data that's needed by sector and by company in terms of where the demand and supply can be matched up. And I guess a real need for tighter workforce planning for green skills in line with economic change and the development of green jobs by companies and key sectors. So that was the second point around the challenges of matching supply and demand. But I guess then the third takeaway was about opportunity, and massive opportunity for the TVET sector globally to step in and to step up with training opportunities and aligning with these green business needs. And we had a fantastic example of the college in Guangzhou in China, which was really clear about how it was innovating and adapting its curriculum, innovating to respond to business needs and economic needs, and also, brilliantly using the WorldSkills framing and the WorldSkills standards to enhance the quality of the training that it was doing and delivering. And we also talked about the opportunity at a pan-regional Asia-Pacific level in terms of recognizing qualifications for green skills between countries and across borders to promote labor mobility. And so it was a big discussion. Those are the three key takeaways around big challenges for sure, but so much focus and progress being made, I think nationally and internationally. And for sure, there are big opportunities ahead. And as I started, we look to the Global Climate Change Summit starting this week in the UK to see what progress can be made by governments internationally in making sure that we are really greening our economies, creating green jobs and green skills for the future. Thank you, Jessie. Back to you.
Thank you. We did talk quite a lot about jobs, so about employment. We still got 5 minutes to go, so for this very final question, I'd like to ask all of you, so feel free to give some of your opinions and suggestions about, how can we work together to really fight youth unemployment? So involvement of private sectors and maybe big businesses, and also world organizations, what is that? And also for some of the organizations related to youth. So for each of you, may I ask you to give like a 1 minute answer to this question? So shall we go from Nazarene, please?
Sure, Jessie, and I'm going to use the words of the chair of the Global Apprenticeship Network, Laurent Frex, who was one of the panelists on day one, who gave out a challenge to the private sector to say if every organization, every business can create one apprenticeship opportunity, and we multiply that by the millions of businesses around the world, we can get so many more young people into training, into viable learning, and then into earning. And I think that's the parting shot that I'd like to give. The private sector needs to actively create opportunity. At the heart of the Global Apprenticeship Network, that's what we are. We're private sector led. We share best practice. We share practice and opportunity. So my last words to the audience and those in the private sector, as well as government, can we each create an opportunity for a young person and amplify this and create this movement starting from today? There's nothing preventing us to start from today. So that's my closing statement. Thanks, Jessie.
Thank you. Lady first, so Jacqueline.
Thank you. I do want to make 3 points. So I think it's really important to include youth in this conversation, because as much as these are all challenges that are very much affecting youth, youth is also going to play a major role in solving all those challenges. And how and why would you try to shape our future without us making a contribution? I also want organizations, governments, and WorldSkills members, businesses, education institutions, and every individual really, to keep thinking in this innovative way that COVID forced us to kind of thinking. And we shouldn't forget how to do that once we arrived in some new normality. And the last thing I just want to say, I want us to really stop talking about the lost generation and instead shine a light on their road ahead and help them find their way. Thank you.
Thank you. Neil, please.
Sure. I think one of the big challenges we've got to focus on is inclusion and really think about, there are massive skills gaps, whether that's in green skills that I was talking about, digital skills, engineering and construction. We have to include as many young people as possible in those career pathways, and particularly looking at including young women more in the workforce and in labour mobility sense, because what we see in the UK, for example, but it's the same globally, that not enough young women are being trained up for new opportunities in new high growth sectors. So there's fantastic opportunity to be more diverse in our workforce, more inclusive. And I'm really pleased that WorldSkills is reviving its equity, diversity and inclusion agenda globally post-COVID. And we in the world, and we in the UK are really happy to support that. And I would encourage all of our partners and members across the world to engage on promoting inclusion, to make sure as many young people as possible are getting the opportunity to succeed in work and life through working with WorldSkills. That's my big push. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but not least, Shane.
Thanks so much, Jessie. Yeah, I'd say, and I agree with Jacqueline completely, that we need to continue to focus on the positive aspects. I think we need to continue to listen to and to support young people in their dreams, their hopes, and their aspirations. I think this means starting early, whether it's, embedding kind of lifelong learning attitudes, or whether, it's on skills development, making those connections with a real focus on, making young people aware of the opportunities and the nature of jobs, the types of jobs, talking to people that do those actual jobs, I think is really important, but also to give them confidence in their skills, in themselves is really important. Obviously the mental health and that confidence has taken a huge hit over the last 20 months. And also really the focus for all actors in helping young people be prepared to go into the labour market, into the job market, really getting them ready in the best possible way. So they're kind of some of the ways or some of the things we need to focus on. But I was really struck by one of the comments in the panel on Monday that I moderated. It was that inclusion is truly everyone's business, which really means that all actors need to play their part, which a number of my fellow panelists have stressed today. So really the future of work is about connecting, this idea of connecting the classroom to the workplace, meaning industry and employers need to play a bigger part in initial education, but also TVET activities, higher education as well, and innovative learning models there, and really integrating young people into the workplace in a meaningful way.
Thank you very much, Shane. Well, from all the discussions, we realized that it's very important to have a diverse voices because we want a unified efforts in this industry, in the particular area to help everyone to get a job, to help everyone in vocational education, in the skills industry, say. So thank you very much for your insights. A big round of applause to all of our panelists, please. 大家掌声给到我们所有的panelists， 谢谢。好的，那么刚才的panel.
Well, we hope that all of you learn something from the panel discussion and also have takeaways from the last few days' discussion. And I want you to focus on a traditional building in the Yangpu district. That is an old building erected in 1922. This will be the WorldSkills Museum, and it will be completed next year and open to the public. This is the first dedicated museum for skills showcasing, and it will also be a platform for skills organizations to cooperate and to communicate. And now I'll invite you to watch a video. Well, this is actually a effect rendering, but I can assure you that next year when you go to visit the museum in person, you will be overwhelmed more than this what this video shows. The reason why we build this museum and to put all skills movement related things into this museum is that we know the importance of craftsmanship. We're now coming to the end of this WorldSkills Conference 2021. First, we'll have Mr. David Hoy for the closing remarks.
Nimen Hao. Hello. Mr. Tang Tiao, Vice Minister of Human Resources and Social Security of China. Mr. Peng Chenlei, Vice Mayor Shanghai. Distinguished panelists, dear Conference Coalition and global partners, honored guests, WorldSkills members and supporters, conference delegates, and young professionals around the world. Thank you all for joining us in the closing plenary session of this year's WorldSkills Conference. Over the last 4 days, we discussed with almost 80 speakers from all over the globe in 14 conference sessions the most pressing challenges facing global skills development. I would like to express my gratitude to the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security, WorldSkills China, WorldSkills Shanghai 2022, and the WorldSkills Secretariat for bringing this conference together online and live in Shanghai. Throughout this week, we heard different perspectives on the pandemic's impact on young people's social and economic prospects. Thank you to the WorldSkills champions for sharing your experiences and insights with us. We know that recovery is a fragile process, but we must pay particular attention to vulnerable and marginalized groups who could be pushed back into extreme poverty. We heard loud and clear that skills are the critical pathway out of this crisis and creating a green future. Equal access to skills is necessary to build equal societies and a more resilient world. During the opening session, Director General from the ILO, Guy Ryder, said something crucial, and I'd like to emphasize again today. Educators matter, trainers matter, teachers matter, and the way they interact with students matters. Each of you, as representatives of education, government, NGOs, and industry, play a critical role in building a skilled path forward. I want to thank each of you for engaging in these important conversations. This week, we learned more about the pandemic's impact on driving forward technology as a central element of education and skills training. Technology can widen access to training, but for it to be effective, we need to address the digital divide or risk exacerbating inequalities. We've also seen some amazing examples of digital innovations from WorldSkills members and global partners, and how the WorldSkills occupational standards can provide a framework of specialized, technical, and transversal skills that together bridge competence to excellence. As evidenced at every WorldSkills competition, the majority of jobs cannot be done remotely. Nicholas Schmidt from the European Commission said it correctly at the opening session when he said, young people have digital skills, but not necessarily those required for their professional life. As industry changes rapidly through digitalization, we must support evolving vet systems to stay relevant and responsive, while never forgetting that skills require the use of hands, head, and heart. Thanks to the thoughtful work of our conference coalition partners, and I want to make sure I get them all here, the African Union, the British Council, European Commission, Federal Ministry of Education and Research from Germany, Global Apprenticeship Network, International Labour Organization, OECD, UNESCO, UNIVOC, and UNIDO. We have now benchmarked critical topics in the global skills conversation. We will follow up on these discussions a year from now, together at WorldSkills Shanghai 2022 and the accompanying conference. I hope you all will make plans to join us and experience in person this critical global movement. Skills for green jobs, poverty alleviation through skills, and the future of apprenticeship systems will remain central themes of our skills development landscape and WorldSkills Conference 2022. One thing became very clear this week. We still have a long road ahead of us, but step by step, and with this engaged, creative, and motivated community assembled here, we will work together on building solutions so that youth can acquire the skills to solve the challenges of the future. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Applause again. Thank you. 接下来要有请上海市副市长。
Next, I'll give the floor to the Vice Mayor of Shanghai, Mr. Peng Chenlei, for closing remarks. Honorable David Hui, CEO of WorldSkills International, Vice Minister Tang Tao, ladies and gentlemen, friends. First of all, on behalf of the Shanghai Municipal People's Government, I would like to express my warm congratulations on the success of WorldSkills Conference 2021. During the conference, participants and experts under the theme of the Road Ahead Forward, Skills for a Resilient Future exchanged on topics of the impact of the COVID-19 on green skills and skills enhancement for social resilience. We conducted many parallel sessions and conversations and discussions, and we have in-depth discussions. They shared many groundbreaking and forward-looking ideas and insights, which have positive significance in strengthening international exchange and mutual understanding in skills and promoting global economic recovery in the post-pandemic era. The 46th WorldSkills competition will be held in Shanghai, China. This is an important decision personally made by the Chinese government with special commitment and careful guidance of President Xi Jinping, and is an important initiative to strengthen exchanges and mutual understanding between China and other WorldSkills members in the field of skills to promote common development of global skills movement. We put forward the goal of being innovative and impactful, and under the careful guidance of the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security of China and the WorldSkills Organization, we have made solid progress in the preparatory work for the WorldSkills competition and achieved phasal results. We have planned 11 competition venues for 63 skills, and we have carefully planned for the WorldSkills Conference and WorldSkills Exposition programs. We are confident to present a refined, safe, memorable WorldSkills competition to the world. Shanghai is the birthplace of China's modern industry and is one of the places with the highest concentration of skilled talents in China. We have always insisted on improving the level of skills as an important cornerstone to promote high-quality economic and social development, and we remain committed to vigorously promoting the spirit of craftsmanship, the new apprenticeship system, and new skills training schemes, carrying out in-depth vocational skills upgrading action plan. In so doing, we aim to promote the competence of and all-around development of labor force, providing a Shanghai approach to the development of China's skills, turning Shanghai into a talent powerhouse in China. Next, Shanghai will take the WorldSkills competition as an opportunity to learn from international advanced experiences and promote international skills exchanges and cooperations in an open, inclusive spirit so as to achieve shared results and win-win cooperation. Finally, I sincerely invite all of you, and I look forward to seeing all of you here in Shanghai next October. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor Peng. Next, I'll give the floor to Vice Minister Tang Tao for closing remarks. Honorable David Hui, Honorable Vice Mayor Peng, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends. The WorldSkills Conference 2021 has been successfully concluded. On behalf of the Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security of China, I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to the WorldSkills organization for its guidance in holding this conference. My gratitude also goes to all my colleagues, experts, and scholars who participated in the dialogues and conversations of the conference. And I would also like to thank the Shanghai Municipal People's Government and relevant organizations who worked hard for the preparation of the conference, as well as everyone who have worked very diligently for the conference. Over the past 5 days of the conference, 80 speakers from around the world exchanged ideas on key topics such as skills for green jobs, poverty alleviation through skills, and future of high-quality apprenticeship, giving us great inspirations for global skills practitioners and laying down a solid foundation for the 2022 WorldSkills Competition and WorldSkills Conference in Shanghai. This is a truly innovative and fruitful conference. 2021 marks the kickoff year of the 14th five-year plan. During the 14th five-year plan period, we will vigorously implement the Skilled China initiative, and we plan to increase the number of skilled labor force by 40 million, and we will promote a more balanced development of skilled labor in the east, middle, and west regions of China. In this process, we will continue to be committed to participating in international cooperations and exchanges in skills, learn extensively from advanced experiences from other countries, and contribute Chinese wisdom to the field of skills. In October 2022, Shanghai will host the 46th WorldSkills Competition. At present, the ministry is actively working with the Shanghai municipality to prepare for the WorldSkills Competition, and we will together strive to deliver to the world a new and impactful, innovative and impactful WorldSkills Competition. We sincerely welcome all colleagues and friends to join this event in Shanghai. Finally, I would like to declare on behalf of the organizing entity of this event, I declare the successful conclusion of the WorldSkills Conference 2021. Thank you. Thank you, Vice Minister Tang. And I would also like to thank the presence of all participants and guests here. I am confident that I will see you all here for the 2022 versions.
World Skill Competition here in Shanghai. Thank you and good day.